I believed the Bible, but I didn't know anything about it, and it had no effect on my life whatsoever.
Okay, very good. Well then, how is it that the Bible's message began to influence your life? How did that come about?
Well, like I mentioned, I believed the Bible. I believed in God. I believed in Jesus Christ. I didn't know anything about any one of them, so it couldn't have an effect on my life. One thing, too, I had no use for hypocrites. I saw so many people claiming to be Christians, and they weren't. First grade arithmetic would tell you that, and I just give it no thought at all. So when the husband of the wife, my wife was studying with, my wife, she figured this out, I guess. But anyways, he came over and we talked. And we talked about the Bible. And he made mention, just in conversation, that the book of Revelation was the hardest book in the Bible to understand. Well, being a man that didn't like to read, in fact, I didn't read much, I looked at that Bible, how thick it was, and I looked at the book of Revelation. I'm being humble, man. I can read that book of Revelation, and then I don't have to read the rest of it. So that made good sense. Well, I was doing quite well through 2 chapters. I got to that 3rd chapter of Revelation, the 15th and 16th verses, and I began to see that I was being a hypocrite. No question in my mind.
So how was it that that scripture and reading it actually affected you so deeply that way? What was it about?
Well, the scripture said that Jehovah knew me in the first place. I didn't even realize that. But then he also said he was going to vomit me out of his mouth. That didn't do me much good either. All it said in reality to me, putting it in my own words, is I made God sick. And I could understand that. So I closed the book. I went back to the first part, Genesis 1:1. I could understand that a little bit anyway. But anyway, being overly familiar, if I could say that, about the effects of drinking and the taste of vomit, it just made me shudder to think that I had left that taste in God's mouth. How disgusting can it get? So that's how I felt about that. So I had to humble myself. And I joined my wife, and our 2 children also joined us in a study of the Bible.
There you go. Well, then it must have been the changes after that must have been fairly easy after going through all of that, right?
Oh, yeah, real easy. I gave that a lot of thought when I got this part. The cussing, I had a terrible mouth, and I was able to put that overnight. But the hardest thing for me to apply, and is hard for me to apply to this day, just one scripture. Romans 12:18. Mentioned earlier on this platform to the baptismal candidates. Oh, that was hard. If possible, if it would ever be possible to wrap a steering wheel around your hand, I could have done that several times. Being a truck driver, you just get so angry with people, and it was so difficult for me to apply that scripture in my life.
Okay, so although having all these, that strong ingrained tendency to be angry and it's difficult to be peaceable with men, it's encouraging to see how hard you are working on this and how successful you've been already. And we know that you and your family and many others are also very happy that you've been able to get control of this and make great changes in your life. How about other people in your life?
Well, I think top of the line is my mom. Staunch Lutheran, never missed a meeting, going to church. I could go on, but my wife would apply what she learned in the Theocratic Ministry School book about writing letters. They were living in Phoenix, us in Minnesota. And my wife would write about these changes. And so they came back to Minnesota just for eyewitnesses. Could that actually be happening? She couldn't hardly believe it. Well, long story short, they studied the Bible and became baptized. They interviewed my mother and dad at the next circuit assembly, and they asked my mom, how come in your late 60s you accepted the truth? And she says, anything that could change my son Albert, I had to look into. And so it was with my employer. I didn't have any problems at work. Like I said, I had a violent temper. But something happened. When we started studying in June, this started in the 1st of January when they announced the upcoming district convention, an international convention in Winnipeg, New York, Winnipeg, Canada. And they asked us, it was over the 4th of July weekend, and they asked us to talk to our employer so that we could get that time off. In my mind, I was never getting that time off. I didn't have enough seniority to get a summer vacation, let alone the 4th of July. But I figured I prayed to Jehovah, and I wanted to go to Winnipeg. So I went in and talked to my boss, my dispatcher, and I told him what I wanted to go to Winnipeg for the summer vacation, or the summer convention, and that I needed that 4th of July weekend off. His reply, anything that we can do for you, Ron, that has to do with your religion, we'll support 100%. That was the change.
That's really something. So the changes that you've made were not only external, but obviously internal as well for this to actually happen. So in conclusion, how is it that the Bible then has really changed, as you mentioned, your dominant attitude?
Well, now I remember this scripture in Revelation 3:15 and 16. That's the prominent one, I guess, that really got me started. And to this day, never do I want to make Jehovah sick again. I do not want him to vomit me out of his mouth. The second scripture, Romans 12:18, is something that I remember well, and by means of it, I know Jehovah is working with me. I pray for it, not every day, but most every day. Many times a week, because I'm still not that peaceful man that I would like to be. So I need to be peaceful with all men, just as that scripture says. So he keeps that thought alive, and it strengthens me to do it.
Thank you so much for